it's Joy. How are you today? I am back with another project for makerforte, and I am making 7 different cards with one background stamp, which happens to be the shower of gifts background. What I am showing up on the screen right now are birthday sentiment ephemera from makerforte as well. And what's really cool about those are they are printed with toner, and they can be colored, like inked up, or used with a marker, or you can run tinfoil sheets over them to have foiled sentiments. So they're super cool. They make 4 quick cards. So one thing I'm looking at with my cards today is that you can use one background, but if you change the colors up or if you change the techniques, you get very different looks, but they come out so quickly. So the first set of cards that you're going to see me make, I am taking my Color Hive inks in the colors of Telephone Box, California Love, and Acid Wash. And I am just smushing those down on the background. And I spray that with a distress sprayer to get it wet. So when I lift the lid of my Misty, you will see that I've got a very watercolory look. And the reason I did a second impression is because I had all that ink and I didn't want to waste it. So one thing you'll notice is that I put my stamp on the inside of the Misty instead of on the door, because I find it's easier to center my cardstock that way. So I just took some ATG tape and taped the back of my cardstock so that it would stick to my Misty door. You can do it however you like. That's just a little trick that I use. So that was 2 cards. Now my third card, I'm taking the exact same color inks, and I'm using my domed foam blenders to just make a rainbow. So I start with my yellow because the other 2 colors can contaminate my yellow, which is ironic because I actually contaminate my blue, but I was able to wipe that off easily from my ink pad and everything was good to go. So you'll see how bright these colors are, and because they are dye inks, you don't necessarily see the blend yet. It kind of looks like a hot mess until it doesn't, and that's what I love about the properties of dye inks. I am using Bristol Smooth cardstock because I think you get a really good blend with it, and you can do some mixed media stuff on it because it'll take a lot of water, which comes in as very important here in a second. So again, for all of my panels except for one, I use the Bristol Smooth cardstock. With this panel, after I get the inks down heavy and a couple of times, I then come in with my distress sprayer and I just saturate the paper. And man, look at this. I am really working that ink. Aren't you glad that I have sped this up by at least 2 times? Otherwise, this would be a very long process. And it's, again, just because I want heavy, heavy saturated inks, because I'm going to get the paper very wet. So this is where I start to bring in the distress sprayer, and I lift that paper up, I tilt it, I get those water running, get the colors running, and that's where you start to see the entire rainbow. And I dry that with my heat gun, and I lay that outside, and then I come out into my next card. And for this one, I am using the clear embossing ink from makerforte, and I'm putting that on the background stamp. I always unscrew my anti-static powder tool, sprinkle out the powder, and then use my brush just to get better coverage. So I am now embossing that with clear embossing powder. It's a fine detail. And what I'm doing next is going to be an emboss resist technique. It's very simple. If you don't want to use clear, if you have a contaminated pad, you can always use white embossing powder, but my ink pad was still very new and clean. So right now I am melting the powder, And then I'm bringing in my new color combination. And I love that you can pretty much do the same techniques with all inks, but the color is what changes everything, changes the mood, changes the way you feel about it, whatnot. So for these cards, I am using Icy Mist, Bubble Tea, and Grape Color Hive inks. And what I try to do is put the colors in at least 2 different places on my cardstock. And again, I am using the Bristol Smooth, and I am roughly putting down the ink colors right now just to map out where I want my blends. And obviously the Bubble Tea and the Icy Mist make another purplish color, so I don't blend those as much with each other, just because I didn't want the card to be completely purple. But again, that is just up to what your taste is. Mine was, I didn't want that. I do go back in and I re-ink each of the sections a second time to get a more vibrant blend and more seamless. And again, that is just preference, but I find no matter what ink or what medium I'm using, I always go back in a second time because you get the best results. So you'll see me come in with it's actually a dry baby wipe. I've used it a few times. I may have even pulled it out of the garbage can. I know that sounds crazy, but I just wipe off the excess ink that's sitting on top of the embossing, and that way you get the bright white showing through from the paper, and I just love that that look. So now I'm coming in for another card, and I did the exact same thing as I did with the first 2 cards. I went in with my Icy Mist, Bubble Tea, and Grape, and I just smushed them down onto my ink pad, onto my background stamp. And I come in with a distress sprayer and I, ink my background. Now you will notice I did come in with my foam domed blending tool, and that was just to get some seamless blending, but that's not necessary. I left out that process just because you've already seen it once before. The next thing I did was I took Eclipse Color Hive ink and I stamped the background in black and white. Now my favorite combination of all time for all cards is a black, a red, with sometimes gray mixed in. So I'm taking one of my favorite Copic blends, which is in R32, 35, 37, and 39. And I am just putting down real simple blends on all the packages. I don't necessarily pay attention to what the light source is because, let's face it, the packages are going in all directions. And this is technically a background, even though for my video and for my purposes, my background actually is my focal point. If the light source is an issue for you and you want to know more about light source and how to get it correct, I will be more than glad to explain that in another video. Just drop me a comment below and I will do that. So typically when I Copic color, I put down the lightest color and then I go in with my darkest and I blend those out accordingly. And then just make sure I get a pretty seamless blend. Now I did notice that because I laid my cardstock down and didn't get a real heavy impression, I went back in with a black Copic just to map out some of those black lines. Now you're going to see that I am adding the different layers of, the 7 different cards. So for the primary color cards, meaning the reds, the blues, the greens, I chose to use a black matte, which was the Eclipse cardstock. I love a black border pretty much on everything, so this is kind of my go-to thing. Now for my other cards, I used either a grape or a bubblegum matte before I put them down onto an A2 size card base. Now I'm coming back with some of the ephemera, and you'll see I'm using the grape Color Hive ink to color some of them. In others, I'm using the bubble tea just to get a little bit different effect on my cards. But honestly, you don't have to. And each and every one of those sentiments are popped up. You saw on screen my little folder of how I store my dome foam blenders. I have one for each color of inks that I own, and I put those in a binder. I laminate them with Velcro. If you're interested in that, I am more than glad to link that down on my website directly to it so you can download it. It'll have all the current makerforte inks if that is something you're interested in. It has been a game changer for me and my organization, so please feel free to do that. Again, while I'm sitting here decorating my cards with different sequins and whatnot, if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing to my channel, I would really appreciate it if that's something you're inclined to do. But again, I just really appreciate you being here with me today, and if you want more inspiration from the makerforte team, I will link to the blog. Until next time, keep crafting. Have a great one. Bye-bye.